Teddy Roosevelt, like I honestly did not even realize that he was on Mount Rushmore until we stumbled upon it like a week or two. So they say like
state of our civics education, right?
No,
there,
but
folks.
they have the saying that I've forgotten more about this topic than you'll ever know about. Like old people say, like that's me for like everything. Like I've forgotten more about like almost everything out there than most people know about it. So I forgot that Teddy Roosevelt was on Mount Rushmore, but when we came across that, like hasn't sat right with me since. So this dude Roosevelt, not only did his buddies assassinate President McKinley, but he so first let me say why they justified each person being on Mount Rushmore. Washington obviously created the nation. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Constitution, and then they say Theodore Roosevelt because he developed industrial growth and built the Panama Canal. The only reason he built the Panama Canal is because that was like the stretch time where we didn't have a central bank holding the country captive. So he got to use the fruits of the labor from not having a central bank and the country actually being rich for a period of time. First of all, and then Lincoln, obviously the last one because of the Civil War and all that stuff. But so
the Civil War and all that stuff.
Whose administration was it that the Mount Rushmore was built under? Because
it was built from 27 to 41. 1927 to 1941.
Who decided what presidents were going on?
This guy named why'd you give me that look? This guy named Gutzon Borglum, a sculptor.
Wait, you're telling me Mount Rushmore was completed in the 40s?
Yes.
Okay, this is the complete state of American history, because I minored in history in college.
Wow.
I would have assumed Mount Rushmore was done in
Hold on.
but by the turn of the century.
Mount Rushmore is not a natural phenomenon? What's the big deal then? So they made some people's faces in a mountain. Okay, that's a joke, people. That's a joke.
It's not like an iconic part of I guess our country or whatever, but like to group in the Teddy Roosevelt, those other guys, and the fact that people have this idea of Roosevelt being some good president, like he's responsible for the worst president, the most destructive force in the history of America. Like off the top of your head, who do you think I'm talking about?
The Bull Moose Party.
Yeah, well, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And like real quick, before I start talking about this, did you guys have a positive or negative idea of Roosevelt?
Before this, somewhat positive.
Yeah, I'm not.
But I'm also very ignorant.
I mean, come on, national parks, the teddy bear, he seems
Trust Buster.
Yeah, the Rough Riders and all. Like he seems like a good, manly guy. You know, like that time he got shot in the chest and then was like, "Okay, I'm just going to finish my speech."
Might have been staged.
Oh yeah, no, I liked him for that reason. Like that was just such a badass story.
I'm very curious now how you're going to try to ruin Teddy Roosevelt for
He got
us.
shot in the chest?
And then went and did his speech.
Did it break skin?
He had like his wallet right here.
No, it was the copy of the speech. It was so thick, the bullet only punctured part way. So, like, the bullet remained in his chest for the rest of his life, I believe, because it just didn't go far enough to hit anything.
Well, then that's not fixed. Now, hold on. Who brought in the Income Tax Act?
Woodrow Wilson.
Okay, so fine. That's
don't get him started. You hate Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is the bad one. But Teddy sounds terrible.
And he's the reason for Woodrow Wilson. So this picture right here, it's a picture that was in a newspaper that shows him with a bunch of communists there. I think that's Karl Marx and Trotsky. So like it was a known thing that he was rubbing elbows with the communist people. So the way that he was responsible for Woodrow Wilson, if we go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So William Taft was the president in 1908 to 1912, super popular, crushed it in the 1908 election. Then 1912, they don't want William Taft to get reelected because he's opposing the Aldrich plan, which is the plan for the Federal Reserve. You know, the creature from Jekyll Island, the Jekyll Island Club, Nelson Aldrich, who was the Chuck Schumer of the time, who was the House Majority Senate leader. He was like talking with the bankers about creating this central bank, which is now the Federal Reserve, because we were on a break. Like we did not have a central bank since Andrew Jackson destroyed it, which is why I think Andrew Jackson should replace Teddy Roosevelt on Mount Rushmore. So from 1836 to 1913, we didn't have a central bank, and it was the most prosperous time in American history. So they say, all right, this guy Taft is opposing the central bank, so we can't have that. But he was too popular for any of their candidates to be outright because Woodrow Wilson was their cuck candidate. So they say, hey, that guy Teddy Roosevelt, he's a popular guy. He could actually serve a term because he only was president because his actual president got assassinated when he was vice president. Remember McKinley, who a lot of people also think the international bankers had him assassinated because of his protectionist policies and his opposition to a central bank. So they trot out Roosevelt and the Bull Moose Party, throw a ton of money behind him, throw a ton of public media support. This is all stuff that's confirmed in Senate hearings that J.P. Morgan, who is like a front man for the Rothschild, like the name J.P. Morgan on the bank right now should be called Rothschild Cuck because he died a poor man. J.P. Morgan was not a rich guy. He was completely a front man for the Rothschilds. That's completely confirmed. And so it was J.P. Morgan and this bank called Kuhn and Loeb that were just throwing money at Roosevelt. And they actually threw money at all three candidates because they didn't want to make it look suspicious. So they took enough votes away from Taft because Roosevelt was like very similar to him, like a Ross Perot situation, to where Woodrow Wilson won the election with less than 50% of the popular vote.
Yeah, I mean, that
Think about that.
stands to reason. And if I'm remembering my history lessons correctly...
Oh, don't show that. That's a surprise, Nat. Don't show that yet.
Roosevelt and Taft were friends for a very long time. And then when Roosevelt reemerged in politics trying to regain office after having left, Taft was like personally hurt by it because his friend was suddenly saying, I have no confidence in you. I'm forming a third party to try to take you out of office. And now that, we have all this information about the money behind it, it sort of paints a clearer picture of why.
Teacher, what's the relation between Eugene v. Debs and the graph that we're seeing?
Eugene v. Debs.
Eugene v. Debs. That was the case
Oh,
where
other notable candidates.
Okay, because Eugene v. Debs, that was the guy that was locked away while he was running for president, and that was the precedent to say that if you're convicted of a felony, you can still run for president, at least from a legal precedent.
And this was the socialist organizer who was in prison.
He was
he's on that list because if you see the pie charts down there, there's a little purple sliver. That's for the Socialist Party.
Yeah. So then what's his name? This guy named Colonel House, who was the guy that told Woodrow Wilson what to do for everything that he did. He comes out and outright says, quote, Teddy Roosevelt got Woodrow Wilson elected. And if you want to know more about this guy, House, who was the acting president when Woodrow Wilson was there, Woodrow Wilson was a complete puppet in every sense of the word. He is quoted as saying that, his father got rich because he was an operator for the Rothschilds during the Civil War, the only person in the South who got rich. And he was quoted as saying that he wants his kids to be subservient to European bankers and not to America first. So this is the guy who was making all the decisions under Woodrow Wilson. He's the guy who pushed for the Federal Reserve, pushed for the IRS, and then Woodrow Wilson in his second term, he's like his whole promise in 1960, he's like, "Oh, guys, we'll never go into the war. We will not go into World War I. Trust me. Like the last thing we'll ever do is go into World War I." Gets elected, and the next day, you got to go World War I. You got to fight for democracy.
To say nothing of his alleged vegetative state for the latter half of his term, where his wife, like after he had a stroke, they didn't tell the country about it.
Yeah.
Edith Wilson was essentially running the country.
Oh, sounds familiar.
It was still Colonel House.
Where she was, holding his hand to sign documents.
Well, and you're hearing now about 2020 2021 through 2024, how Hunter Biden and Jill Biden were sitting in on private cabinet meetings with Joe Biden and making decisions on behalf of Biden for the rest of allegedly.
And at the end of World War I, I know this is like a side thing, but what was Woodrow Wilson's big project?
The League of Nations. Yeah.
Which fell apart
because
because the U.S. wouldn't get involved. What was League of Nations Part 2? United Nations after World War II. So it's like you have a bunch of people who steer us into a world war. Ends with, what if we made this giant global conglomerate world government to run everything so world wars don't happen again? And then they just kept doing world wars until they got one that worked.
I literally can speak 3 hours for every bad, evil, sick, twisted discussing that Woodrow Wilson did to
which you frequently
everything
do
bad
on the Brendan Aceto show.
I know, yeah, exactly, and I'll talk about later tonight too, because I have a whole sequence of videos to show about this, but. Ask Umberto. I complain about Woodrow Wilson at least 3 times a week. He's responsible for funding the Bolsheviks and the Nazis. Him and Wall Street gave money to the Bolsheviks, helped overthrow Russia, the Tsar, and helped Hitler get money after Germany was wiped out. So every single bad thing that happened started here with Woodrow Wilson being a cuck for the bankers, because the bankers just want death and destruction. So what do you guys think about that? I know I'm kind of.
I just say League of Nations sounds like a good Marvel movie, but
it does. But I mean,
you need to be more convincing, though, Brandon. I've asked the chat, should he be removed? And so far, it's only a slight lead on yes. It's 52 to 48.
Well,
so what else?
He has a mustache in.
All right, how about this? Oh, sorry. How about this? If that's not enough, I'm glad I saved this for last. According to Ron Chernow or whatever his name is,
Ron Chernow, the documentary or the
author, wrote a book called The House of Morgan, where in the book he says that Teddy Roosevelt and J.P. Morgan were secret blood brothers.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Like when you cut your fingers and you shake hands and now you're blood brothers, or they're actually related brothers?
He seems to be alleging they were actually related, from what I could gather. I mean, he kind of just glosses over it. Like, he says, like, yeah, they were secret blood brothers. But, I mean, at the very least, like, it means that there was a fake fight, like the whole trust buster thing with Teddy Roosevelt. Like, he was, in reality, like, making them stronger, if anything. And then at the worst case scenario, they were, like, legitimately brothers and, like, colluding the entire time. But, like, if you guys don't like international bankers, like the Rothschilds and the Warburgs and everything, and you can't like Teddy Roosevelt at the same time as you're disliking those guys. So I don't know why that polls at that level.
Bunch of globalist cucks in
Yeah,
the chat
yeah,
today.
you guys are
Come on,
globalists.
So if you were to take him off of Mount Rushmore, who
Andrew Jackson all day. Andrew Jackson.
so not Trump.
Not yet. He has to. Andrew Jackson successfully destroyed the central bank, so Trump needs to do the same thing. End the Fed, and Trump will be on Mount Rushmore.
Okay,
Amy?
here. Let me give you a hypothetical here, Brendan. Say Mount Rushmore is currently blank. There is no one on it.
Yep.
What 4 people are you putting on Mount Rushmore as it currently stands?
Washington, Andrew Jackson, Trump over Thomas Jefferson, I guess, deserves a spot because of the Constitution. Lincoln gets a little bit more credit than he deserves because his intentions weren't as, I guess,
Altruistic.
yeah,
and-
not as
and
altruistic
equitable.
as people portray it to be, because it was nothing to do with slavery. It was just all about preserving the nation. He literally said before the Civil War, "I don't care if we have slavery or not slavery. As long as we preserve the nation, I'm cool with it." So he used slavery as like a way to recruit people to fight because it was a better sales pitch.
Maybe
So
that's a
who you
bad
would
argument.
choose, sorry.
Oh.
That's who you would choose ultimately if you had to only pick one to replace them. Would
Andrew
you pick
Andrew Jackson right
Oh,
now, yeah.
Andrew
Who
Jackson,
says it has to
okay.
be filled with 4 good presidents? Make it 4 terrible presidents. Everybody shows
John
up to
Quincy
cheer.
Adams,
Mount
Millard
Cuckmore.
Fillmore.
May I ask, and maybe this is a bad comparison, but did you have a problem where we were tearing down statues of Confederate soldiers or renaming military forts of Confederate military personnel because of woke times?
Rob's calling you a hypocrite. in very
No, I'm
polite
asking.
terms.
I started this and I prefaced it with maybe it's a bad comparison, but I'm wondering, just because your viewpoint on Teddy Roosevelt is that it's a negative one, should he be removed? Did you also have similar problems when other people had negative viewpoints about Confederate soldiers and statues that were honoring them?
I mean, I didn't have strong feelings about that, but I put international bankers as the worst people in the world. So, like, I mean, yeah, like Confederate soldiers, like you could say some bad things about them, but international bankers are immensely worse than them. So,
Okay, so on the list of bad people, where can we? International bankers is number 1.
yeah, like next to the devil.
What's number 2?
Next to the devil.
When you say international banker, are you talking about like
Like the Rothschilds and the Warburgs and the
okay.
people who started the Federal Reserve. Like, because they're the same people who started the first and second central bank. Like, I don't know. Like, it's crazy to me how these families keep it like going strong at this all the time. Like, normally families fall apart and like are spoiled and shit, but they keep it going strong somehow.
And do you know the actual Rothschild's net worth, or is that a mystery like Putin's?
20 trillion estimated.
So how much is Elon worth?
500 billion.
So wouldn't they be the richest people
Yeah,
in
they
the
are.
world?
Yeah, they are.
How come every time it says Elon Musk richest person
Because
in
it's
the world?
divided
Because-
among, it's divided among
By the
No, because
family.
they own all that stuff.
And
Brendan,
it's
Brendan,
unclear what their
Who do you
aggregated
really
wealth
mean
is.
by the international bankers?
The Rothschilds and the Warburgs primarily. Oh, I see what you're saying.
So if you like this clip, click right here. And if you want to see more like it, click right here. Stay angry, Patriots.